You ever notice how nobody remembers signing up for half the stuff society expects us to do? I mean, there must have been a clipboard going around in the maternity ward. All right, kid, welcome to Earth. Sign here. You agree to work 40 years, pay taxes, smile in pictures, pretend you love kale, and act like you're thrilled to meet people you secretly can't stand. Somewhere between being born and learning how to tie our shoes, we all apparently signed this invisible contract, the fine print of society. Nobody reads it, but everybody follows it. That's the thing about this fine print. It's sneaky. It's not written down anywhere. It's in the air, it's in commercials, it's in the way your aunt looks at you when you say you don't want kids. It's in the weird silence you get when you tell people you're happy being single. The fine print doesn't come from one place, it oozes out of everything. It's a fog made of expectation, and we're all walking through it acting like we can see clearly. Let's talk about those expectations. The world hands you a checklist at birth, right? You're supposed to go to school, get good grades, go to college, get a job, get married, buy a house, have kids, raise them to do the same thing, and then die quietly so you don't interrupt anyone's favorite TV show. It's a loop. Nobody questions it. And if you do question it, people act like you're dangerous. What do you mean you don't want a career? What do you mean you don't want to buy a house? So, what do you mean you don't want to join the rat race? Because that's what it is, isn't it? A rat race. And the punchline is, even if you win, you're still a rat. We've all been conditioned to chase things we don't need, to impress people we don't like, with money we don't have. And we do it with a smile. Why? Because the fine print says we're supposed to. That's the rule. You must look like you're enjoying it, even if you're spiritually dying inside. You can't just say, hey, maybe I don't need a luxury SUV to feel important. No, that's crazy talk. You must have the right car, the right clothes, the right house, and the right phone plan. Because that's what responsible adults do. We call it being successful. But what it really means is being exhausted and pretending it's fine. You know what the fine print really is? It's social programming disguised as wisdom. You can be anything you want. Oh, really? Try being unemployed and happy. Try telling people you're not ambitious. They'll look at you like you just confessed to a felony. You mean you don't have a 5-year plan? No, I barely have a 5-minute plan. And it's mostly snacks. The fine print tells us what to value too. It's why people worship busyness. How are you? Oh, busy, like it's a badge of honor. Being busy doesn't mean you're productive. It just means you've successfully filled every minute of your life with noise, so you don't have to think about what's missing. The fine print says, if you're not constantly doing something, you're wasting your life. But if you stop doing everything and actually sit still for a minute, you start realizing the truth. Most of what we do is meaningless filler. It's background static for a life we never got to program ourselves. And the fine print changes depending on where you are. In school it says a fit in. Later it says a stand out. But not too much. Just enough to look interesting in a job interview. In your 20s it says alive, wild, be free. By your 30s it says why aren't you married yet? And by your 40s it says you better start saving for retirement. And nobody ever asks who's writing this stuff. Who's the author? Who benefits from us following this invisible script? Because it sure isn't us. I'll tell you who loves the fine print: advertisers. They've been handwriting those invisible clauses for decades. They tell you how to smell, how to shave, how to dress, how to age gracefully, which is just code for buy this cream and panic quietly. The fine print says happiness is a product, and if you don't have it yet, that's because you haven't bought enough. They turn human insecurity into a business model. You're not tall enough, not young enough, not white enough, not tan enough, not enough. But hey, don't worry, there's a product for that. Just sign here, right below the line where it says the terms and conditions may apply. And social expectations. Oh, they're everywhere. The fine print says men have to be strong and stoic and never cry unless it's a football game. It says women have to be beautiful and nurturing and somehow look perfect while managing 17 tasks and pretending it's effortless. It says parents have to know everything. Teachers have to fix everything, and nobody's allowed to admit they're tired of pretending. That's the real secret contract. The one that says to keep it together. No matter how much you're falling apart, smile for the photo. Smile for the photo. Even relationships have fine print. You think love is about connection and honesty? Nope. It's also about knowing how to navigate invisible clauses like thou shalt not forget the anniversary, or thou shalt guess what's wrong without being told, and now thou shalt not look bored during home decor shopping. We all agree to this nonsense without a single discussion. Love becomes another checklist, and we all act surprised when it starts feeling like a subscription service that auto-renews every year. A workplace? Oh, the fine print there is thicker than a mortgage contract. It says we're a family here, but what it really means is you will work overtime for free and smile while doing it. It says we value creativity, but the moment you get creative, someone in a suit reminds you to stick to the template. No. It says we care about your well-being, right before sending you an email about unpaid overtime. The corporate fine print is the same everywhere. Pretend you care about the company as much as we do about our profit margins. In school, that's where they start handing out the invisible pens. From the moment you learn to sit still and color inside the lines, you're already learning to follow directions you never agreed to. Raise your hand. Wait your turn. Memorize this. Don't question that. Then they hand you a diploma and call it education. But what it really was orientation. A lifelong training course in how to obey politely. By the time you get to adulthood, you're fluent in compliance. You've learned how to follow instructions that make no sense and smile while doing it. You become a professional reader of fine print without ever realizing it. Even morality has fine print. Every culture has its little exceptions. Those things that are technically wrong but are socially acceptable. We lie about how we're doing, pretend to be nice to people we dislike, and call it politeness. We glorify charity but ignore empathy. We praise honesty, but only the kind that doesn't make anyone uncomfortable. The fine print of morality says do the right thing, unless it's inconvenient. And that's the line most people sign right away. And let's not forget the fine print about happiness. You ever notice how happiness has become a competition? Who's the happiest? Everyone's posting their highlight reel. Vacations, promotions, avocado toast. Like life's one big brochure. But the real fine print says you can only be happy if your life looks good to other people. So people chase aesthetics instead of joy. They curate themselves like museum exhibits, carefully lit, perfectly posed, emotionally hollow. And the saddest part, nobody even remembers what real happiness feels like without the filter. That's the brilliance of the system. It doesn't need to force you. It just convinces you. The fine print doesn't shout, it whispers. You're financing your own unhappiness at 0% interest and infinite regret. The price of compliance starts small. It's sneaky. It begins with being told to be nice. That's the first clause in the social contract, to be nice. Which really means don't make anyone uncomfortable by being honest. That's where it all starts. You learn that politeness is more important than truth. So you swallow your thoughts, your feelings, your personality, and over time you develop this chronic condition called pretending. Pretending you're okay, pretending you agree, pretending you're thrilled about everything that slowly drains your soul. It's contagious too. You see someone else pretending, you think, that's how it's done. Then you do it. Before you know it, we're all at a global masquerade party, clinking glasses and smiling through gritted teeth. You pay for compliance and pieces of time first. Hours of your life traded for obligations you never question. Work meetings, social events, dinner parties with people who say, let's do this again soon, and Mina, please never contact me again. You sit through endless small talk, which is basically human buffering, while your real self is standing in the corner screaming, is this it? Is this what we evolved for? You start to wonder if the cavemen had it right. At least they didn't have to network. The workplace now, that's where compliance becomes a full-time career. You show up, smile, nod at the right times, and pretend the phrase, and let's circle back on that, means something. You perform enthusiasm like an actor in a low-budget play that never ends. You even get a feedback sessions where they tell you to lean in and show initiative. Just not too much, because then you're a threat. You learn the art of strategic mediocrity. Do well enough to keep your job, not well enough to get noticed. The fine print of compliance says, keep your head down and your mouth shut. And that's how the world keeps spinning smoothly, powered by polite silence. And we do it all for what? Security? Respect. A paycheck that barely covers the cost of pretending you're okay. People will tell you it's worth it. That's just how it is. But let's be honest, that's just how it is the national anthem of compliance. It's what people say when they've given up. When they've accepted that comfort is more important than conviction. When they've traded their why for a whatever. You can measure the cost of compliance and anxiety too. You ever notice how everyone's stressed all the time? Not because they're fighting wars or wrestling tigers. No, it's because they're trying to meet invisible standards. They're performing 24/7. We even turned relaxation into a competition. Oh, you took a vacation? That's cute. I went to Bali and did sunrise yoga on a cliff while drinking something called activated almond mist. Everything's a status symbol now. Even your downtime. And heaven forbid you actually rest. The fine print says you can rest, as long as you feel guilty about it. We've been trained to equate compliance with goodness. You follow the rules, you're a good citizen. You color inside the lines, you're well-adjusted. You ask too many questions and suddenly you're difficult. You step out of line and you're uncooperative. Society doesn't want thinkers. It wants followers who believe they're thinkers. People who'll argue about which brand of phone is better while agreeing silently that they both need one. That's not free will. That's managed freedom. You get to choose the color of your K. And that's where the big cost hits. Individuality. The more you comply, the more you blur into everyone else. You start wearing the same expressions, saying the same phrases. It is what it is, a living the dream, or just grinding. Grinding what exactly? Your soul into dust? The language of compliance is full of these little slogans that sound fine until you realize they're code for surrender. Living the dream means I stopped fighting it. It is what it is means I've accepted defeat with a smile. We've built an entire culture of polite resignation, and we call it maturity. And don't get me wrong, not all compliance is bad. You stop at red lights, you pay your taxes, you say a please and a thank you. That's basic civilization. But the kind of compliance I'm talking about, that quiet, spiritual kind, that's the killer. The one that makes you tone yourself down because your full volume might scare people. The one that makes you trade creativity for stability, that's the tax we pay for belonging. We spend so much time trying to fit in that we forget we were supposed to stand out. You ever watch a kid before the world gets to them? They're fearless. They'll wear pajamas to the grocery store and call it fashion. They'll sing off-key in public and think it's a concert. Then we teach them to be normal. Don't say that. Oh, don't act that way. They'll be like everyone else. By the time they're adults, they've learned how to hide everything that made them special. That's Compliance Training 101, and the world rewards it. You get a job, a mortgage, and a lifetime of wondering what might have happened if you hadn't listened. Then there's the emotional cost. You can't be authentic and compliant at the same time. They don't mix. You start saying yes when you mean a no, a fine when you mean a miserable, a thank you when you mean a please stop talking. You start living like a translation error. The more you comply, the less you belong to yourself. You start borrowing personalities just to get through the day. The charming one for the office, the agreeable one for the family, the polite one for strangers. And when the day's over, you look in the mirror and realize you don't even know which version's real anymore. And the irony? Everyone else feels the same way. Everyone's exhausted from pretending, but nobody wants to be the first to drop the act. We're all standing in line waiting for someone else to say, "Hey, does this feel fake to you?" But nobody does, because the fine print says it don't make it awkward. We'd rather drown in politeness than admit we're miserable in unison. It's like we're all trapped in a customer service training video that never ends. Smile, engage, empathize. Meanwhile, you're silently screaming, "Can I just be a human again?" Compliance even taxes your imagination. You stop dreaming big because you start hearing the voice of practicality. Be realistic. That's the death sentence for originality right there. Be realistic is code for be afraid. It's how we shrink our possibilities down to fit inside someone else's comfort zone. You stop taking risks, stop trying new things, stop asking a why not. You just go with the flow. Not because you like the direction, but because swimming against it looks exhausting. And eventually you convince yourself you like where you're going. That's the saddest part. Compliance has a way of making you fall in love with your own captivity. We even comply emotionally. You ever fake a laugh at a joke that wasn't funny? That's emotional obedience. You ever clap at the end of a presentation just because everyone else did? That's herd psychology. You ever say I love you out of habit instead of feeling? That's spiritual automation. We've become so good at mirroring that we've forgotten how to reflect. We think connection means agreement, but agreement isn't love, it's comfort. And comfort's great, until it turns into complacency. And let's talk about what compliance does to creativity. You can't create anything interesting if your main goal is not to offend anyone. Art used to challenge, provoke, make people uncomfortable. Now it has to be market-tested, focus group approved, and algorithm-friendly. The dreamers, the dropouts, the artists, the thinkers, the folks who refuse to play the game because they see it's rigged. They're the ones who say, you know what? Maybe success isn't about climbing ladders. Maybe it's about building a hammock. They're the ones who decide that self-respect is more valuable than public approval. They're not heroes, they're just awake. And once you're awake, you can't go back to sleep without feeling ridiculous. Rewriting the fine print isn't just personal, it's contagious. You start living differently, and people notice. You become a walking contradiction, and that confuses the system. You stop apologizing for existing the way you are, and suddenly others realize they don't have to either. You show up late to the script, ad-lib your lines, and everyone else starts to loosen up too. That's how the big shifts happen. Not through riots or revolutions, but through quiet, consistent non-compliance, the kind that looks boring until it's everywhere. Now let's talk about the last part, resisting. Because once you've read the fine print and rewritten your own version, the world's not going to send you a thank you card. It doesn't like people who refuse to play along. It'll call you stubborn, difficult, impractical. That's fine. Impractical just means it doesn't fit into my comfort zone. And the people who call you that, they're usually just jealous you had the guts to do it. Resisting doesn't mean living in constant opposition. It doesn't mean being angry all the time or rejecting everything. It means having a filter. It means saying, I'll take this, but not that. It's the difference between being rebellious and being aware. You can work a job, pay your bills, live in society. You just don't have to believe every ridiculous thing it tells you. You can play the game without thinking it's real. You can smile at the system, shake its hand, and quietly refuse to buy its nonsense. That's resistance. Subtle, smart, and deeply satisfying. And you know what else? Resistance doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's as simple as not rushing. Just slowing down in a world addicted to speed is an act of rebellion. Saying a no to an invitation when you'd rather rest. Rebellion. Telling someone the truth instead of what they want to hear. Rebellion. Turning off the noise, sitting in silence, not trying to be productive for 5 minutes. In this era, that's full-on revolutionary. You don't have to overthrow governments. Just overthrow your own compulsion. The truth is, most people resist until it's inconvenient. They'll say, I don't care what people think, right up until someone actually disapproves. Then they crumble like a bad souffle. Real resistance is quiet confidence. It's the ability to stand alone without turning it into a performance. You don't need a crowd. You don't need validation. You just need conviction and a sense of humor. Because if you're going to resist, you'd better learn to laugh. Otherwise, you'll spend your life mad at people who are just reading from a bad script. Here's something funny. When you stop following the fine print, life doesn't get easier. It gets real. And that's a lot harder. Because real means messy. Real means sometimes you don't have a plan. And sometimes you fail spectacularly. But at least it's yours. You can look at your mistakes and think, yep, I wrote that scene myself. And that's a kind of satisfaction the compliant crowd will never know. They'll spend their lives executing someone else's blueprint, trying to please an invisible committee. But when you live on your own terms, even failure feels honest. It's your failure. And carved, one of a kind, not mass-produced. The funny part is, when you stop caring about the fine print, people start mistaking you for brave. You're so brave. No, I'm just tired. Tired of pretending agreeable. Tired of signing invisible contracts with expiration dates on joy. Once you stop trying to be everyone's idea of a normal, you realize how little any of it matters. All the status, all the approval, all the good opinions of others, it's just noise. You stop listening to it, and suddenly life gets quieter, lighter, funnier. You realize freedom's not this big dramatic gesture. It's just the ability to say, no thanks, I'm good. Resisting the fine print doesn't make you a rebel. It makes you sane. You start seeing life for what it is, a temporary, bizarre, beautiful experiment that doesn't need to be lived according to anyone's checklist. You start finding joy in stupid little things. Bad coffee, good conversations, long walks, real laughter. You rediscover the tiny pleasures you lost while you were busy being serious. You start realizing the whole point of life isn't to perform, it's to experience. The fine print never told you that part, did it? It just said achieve, acquire, impress. But living, that's not in the contract. You have to write that part yourself. And once you do, once you start rewriting and resisting enough, something wild happens. The world stops feeling like a prison. It starts feeling like a playground again. You stop being afraid of being wrong. You stop needing permission to be happy. You stop checking if other people approve before you breathe. You become that rarest of creatures, an unbothered human. And that's the one thing the fine print can't control. Because unbothered people don't buy nonsense. They don't sign invisible deals, they just live. And here's the thing nobody tells you. The fine print can't exist without your signature. That's the catch. It only has power because we keep agreeing to it. We enforce it on each other. Through gossip, judgment, envy, and comparison. We're the ones keeping the contract alive. The moment enough of us stop signing, it collapses. Just like that. No drama, no speeches, no revolutions. Just quiet people choosing differently. Choosing to live instead of perform. Choosing truth over approval. Choosing freedom over familiarity. Choosing to stop apologizing for existing the way they are. And that's the moment society has to change, because it has no choice. The old fine print can't survive in a world full of people who started reading. The trick was never to destroy the system, it was to outgrow it. So yeah, maybe it's time we stop pretending we agreed to all this. Maybe it's time we stop nodding politely and start laughing instead. Maybe it's time we pick up the red pen and write something better, something honest, something ours. Because the fine print might run deep, but ink fades when enough people stop believing in it.